All right, 40 days through the Bible, day 31. This was the book of Daniel through the book of Amos. And in Daniel chapter 3, we read the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And the passage says, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied to King Nebuchadnezzar, "We do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it, and he will deliver us from your majesty's hand. But even if he does not, we want you to know, your majesty, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up." And a lot of us, when we read this story, we think that the fact that God saved Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego from the fiery furnace is the confirmation that they were doing what God wanted, that they were following God's will. And it leads to this thing where most of us tend to judge whether we obey God or whether we heard God correctly based on the outcomes that we receive after we make the decision. So we're like, no, I'm not going to bow down to the idol. And then God saves us from the fiery furnace, and we're like, yeah, see, that's obviously what we should have done. Like, we heard God correctly. We were supposed to refuse. But the thing that I want to challenge you with is that whether or not God saved them, and this is what they understood, right? They said, even if he does not, even if God doesn't save us from the fire, we know that he can, we believe that he will, but even if he doesn't, we're still not going to bow down to your idols, right? And it's like, well, why? It's well, because the very first commandment is you shall have no other gods before me, and the second commandment is that you shan't make any idols, right? And so there's this idea that whether or not God saved them is irrelevant to the decision that they should make. The only answer to will you bow down to this idol is no. Like, if you actually believe that your God is God, and if you actually believe that he gave the 10 commandments that he gave, and you're in their position and someone says, hey, bow down to an idol, and you know that doing that, you would be breaking the first 2 commandments of the actual God in favor of obeying a king who serves a false God, the only answer is no. And if God saves me, he saves me. If he doesn't, he doesn't, right? But a lot of us don't think that way, and we don't make decisions that way in our own lives. We look at it and we're like, oh, well, see, like they said they weren't going to do it, but then look at that. Then they went and they got burnt up in the fiery furnace. Maybe they should have used some wisdom. Maybe they should have thought through and listened, because I don't think God was telling them to do that because he didn't save them. And it's like, well, it doesn't matter whether he saved them or not, right? The king said, serve this other God. And they're like, yeah, no, the very first commandment from the actual God is you shall serve no other gods. So the only answer is no, right? So when you look at your own life and when you're trying to figure out what you should do and whether you've heard from God correctly or not in some of these things, you have to stop judging based on outcomes, and you have to judge based on the proper decision to make at the time based on what you know, right? You always know the first and second commandment is you shall have no other gods before me, and you shall not make any idols. So there is no situation where someone says, will you bow down to this idol, where God's going to be like, hey, yeah, no, sir, no, so like, go ahead and do it, right? It's just like, that's not the case. Like, you know that that's the wrong decision always, period. And so it doesn't matter whether God is going to save you, or whether God tells you that he'll save you or not, or whether God actually does save you or not. The right decision is no, I'm not going to do that, right? And this is something that they understood, which is why they said, hey, we believe he's able to do it. We even think he's going to do it. But even if he doesn't, it doesn't matter. We're not bowing down, and we're not serving something other than the Lord. So I think that's all I have for this one. See you in the next one.